30-second challenge. Spontaneous speaking for English learners. The unlikely challenge. Jason was a 25-year-old software developer from New York City. He had always been a quiet person, the type who preferred his own company, and rarely spoke unless it was necessary. He'd grown up with English as his first language, but there was one thing Jason had always struggled with: speaking spontaneously. He could read and write well, and his grammar was flawless. But when it came to speaking on the spot, especially in meetings or casual conversations, Jason always froze. The words would get stuck somewhere between his brain and his mouth, and he'd end up saying something awkward, like, "I have to the thing, oh, never mind." He'd been working at his company for 3 years, but every time they had a team meeting or impromptu brainstorming session, he felt like he was in the middle of a pressure cooker. He had an idea, but it felt like he needed 10 years to explain it. That's when his colleague Mia introduced him to something that would change his life, or at least make him less awkward in meetings. "Jason," Mia said one day, "have you ever tried the 30-second speaking challenge?" Jason blinked. "The what?" "The 30-second challenge. It's where you get a random topic, and you have to speak about it for 30 seconds. No thinking, no planning, just speak. It's a great way to practice spontaneous speaking." Jason frowned. "I don't know if I can do that. I'm terrible at it." Mia shrugged. "That's the point. You've got to push yourself. Trust me, it works. Here, let's do one right now." Before Jason could protest, Mia picked up a small sticky note from her desk and wrote down a word. She showed it to Jason. "Unicorn." "All right," she said. "You have 30 seconds to talk about unicorns." "Ready?" Jason stared at the word. Unicorns? He'd never thought much about them. He was supposed to talk about unicorns. For 30 seconds? "Go," Mia said, setting a timer on her phone. Jason took a deep breath and stared at the word, his mind going blank. He could feel the sweat building on his forehead. Unicorns are horses with, they have, like, one horn, right? And, they live in, like, fairy tales or something. Maybe they exist in, another dimension? I don't know. But they probably eat candy or magic? Yeah, magic candy, that's all I got. Mia looked at him, trying to keep a straight face. "Okay, I mean, that was something." Jason slumped in his chair, embarrassed. "I told you I'm terrible at this." Mia laughed. "Hey, that was a good start. You spoke for 30 seconds without stopping. And you didn't just say "I don't know" over and over. Plus, you mentioned magic candy. That's creative. Jason didn't feel creative. He felt like he was sweating bullets. But Mia's encouragement was enough to make him think, maybe I can get better at this. Maybe this challenge could actually help. The 30-second challenge takes off. For the next week, Mia and Jason made it a routine. Every day, they would challenge each other to talk about random things. The topics ranged from the serious, like climate change, to the absurd, like penguin dance competitions. The goal wasn't to give a perfect speech, but to simply keep speaking for 30 seconds. On the second day, Mia gave him the word pizza. Jason immediately felt more confident. Pizza? He could talk about pizza for hours. "All right, 30 seconds. Ready?" Mia asked, holding her phone up. "Go." Jason cleared his throat and went into full pizza mode. "Okay, pizza is... it's the best food in the world. I mean, who doesn't love pizza? You can have it with so many toppings, like mushrooms, pepperoni, cheese, pineapple, which, by the way, pineapple absolutely belongs on pizza, don't at me. And it's also the perfect food for any occasion, whether it's a party or just a regular Friday night. The crust is the most important part, though. Crispy, but not too crispy. Oh, and dipping it in ranch? Genius. Mia stopped the timer. See? That was great! Jason grinned. I guess I'm pretty good at talking about pizza. Mia raised an eyebrow. Yeah, but next time let's try something a little harder. The challenge was starting to get easier. Jason noticed that he wasn't spending as much time thinking about what to say. It was becoming more natural, even if he was talking about the most random topics. One day, Mia handed him the word clouds. Jason frowned. Clouds? What do I know about clouds? But he didn't let that stop him. He took a deep breath, gave it a shot, and spoke. Clouds are, white and fluffy, right? But they're not just pretty things in the sky. They're made of water vapor, and they can carry rain. Some clouds look like animals or shapes, and people like to point them out. It's like nature's version of a Rorschach test. And then, when you look at a cloud for too long, you can kind of lose track of time and forget about everything else. Mia stared at him in surprise. Wow, that was actually deep, Jason laughed. Yeah, I guess I have a cloud theory now. Mia looked proud of him. You're getting better. You didn't hesitate, you didn't panic, and you spoke for 30 seconds without stopping. That's the key. The pressure builds. Things were going well until one fateful Friday afternoon. Jason was invited to a lunch meeting with a potential new client. Normally, Jason would have just nodded quietly and left the talking to his colleagues. But this time, something different happened. The client, an upbeat entrepreneur named Liz, turned to Jason and said, Jason, what do you think about our new product idea? Could it work in the market? Jason froze. He hadn't prepared for this. His mind immediately started racing. What do I say? What do I say? He could feel the old habit creeping back in. The one where he overthought everything and froze in front of people. But then he remembered the 30-second challenge. He had to speak. He had to speak now. Jason began. He quickly collected his thoughts and just started speaking. Well, I think it could work, definitely. The product fills a gap in the market, right? And people today are looking for convenience and simplicity. Plus, the design is sleek and modern. I think it's something people would want to buy. The key, though, is marketing. If you can position it as something essential, like the must-have thing people didn't know they needed, then it'll sell. Jason stopped and realized that he hadn't stuttered or hesitated once. He had spoken for 30 seconds without any major pauses, and Liz was nodding along. That's a solid perspective, Liz said. I like your thinking. Jason sat back in his chair, shocked. He had just spoken spontaneously in a professional setting, and it didn't feel like a disaster. As soon as the meeting ended, Mia messaged him. How'd it go? Jason replied. I survived. I actually spoke without panicking. Mia texted back with a simple message. See? A few months later, Jason found himself preparing for an important presentation to the senior leadership team. The stakes were high. This was a project he had been working on for months, and the presentation could decide whether the company would move forward with it. Jason was nervous, but there was something different this time. Instead of focusing on the slides, he decided to focus on his speaking skills. He didn't want to freeze up when it came time to answer questions, so he decided to use the 30-second challenge in the days leading up to the presentation. He spent every morning standing in front of his bathroom mirror, practicing answering random questions about his project in 30 seconds or less. Why is this project important? Who benefits from this idea? What's the next step if this doesn't work? When the day of the presentation arrived, Jason was still nervous, but he wasn't as terrified as he would have been before. The 30-second challenge had helped him speak more confidently, and when a senior manager asked him a tough question in the middle of his presentation, Jason didn't freeze. He didn't panic. He took a deep breath and spoke, spontaneously and confidently. The unexpected test. Jason couldn't believe it. He had just nailed the presentation. The senior team was impressed, and even his boss gave him a congratulatory handshake. But as Jason was basking in the afterglow of his success, the universe decided to throw him one more curveball. It happened during lunch, the day after the presentation. Jason was sitting in the cafeteria, minding his own business and enjoying a sandwich, when a colleague, Tim, approached his table with a big grin. "Hey, Jason, I need your help with something," Tim said. He pulled up a chair and sat down, not giving Jason a chance to respond before launching into his request. "So, my friend is visiting from out of town, and he's a big fan of New York City. He's always wanted to know what it's like to live here. I told him you could give him a good idea, considering you've lived here your whole life. How about you give him a little impromptu tour tomorrow? You know, just talk about what it's like to live here, the best places to visit, the food, the vibe. Just make it spontaneous. It'll be fun, right?" Jason blinked. "Wait, what? You want me to give a tour of New York tomorrow and just talk about it?" Tim gave him an enthusiastic thumbs up. "Exactly. Just talk. You're good at it now, I can tell. This'll be easy for you." Jason's heart sank, giving a tour, spontaneously, without any preparation. He was pretty sure this was a bad idea, but then he thought about it. This was exactly the kind of thing he'd been training for with the 30-second challenge. It wasn't going to be a formal presentation. It would be a casual conversation with someone who wasn't expecting a TED Talk. Still, the pressure was on. He had to speak fluently, spontaneously, and without sounding like he was reading from a script. He turned to Tim and sighed. "All right, I'll do it. But only because you're my friend. And also because you're terrifyingly convincing." The power of spontaneous speaking. Jason's spontaneous speaking journey wasn't over. In fact, it had just begun. He started to realize that the 30-second challenge wasn't just about talking for 30 seconds. It was about building confidence. Every time he pushed himself to speak without planning, he was breaking down the walls of hesitation and fear. A few weeks later, Jason found himself in a meeting with a high-profile client, and they asked him a tricky question. Instead of panicking or waiting for someone else to answer, Jason did what he had learned from the challenge. He spoke confidently. He wasn't perfect, but he didn't need to be. After the meeting, his boss, Karen, pulled him aside. "Jason, you did great today. You spoke up in front of the client without hesitation, and I could see the confidence in your answers." Jason smiled. "Thanks, Karen. Honestly, it's all thanks to a challenge I started with my colleague. It's helped me stop overthinking every word and just talk." Karen raised an eyebrow. "Really? Well, I'm glad it worked. I'm going to have to try that challenge myself." Jason grinned. "It's a game changer." The 30-second success. By now, Jason had become a pro at the 30-second challenge. He used it in meetings, during casual conversations, and even at social gatherings. Moral of the story. 1. Confidence comes from practice, not perfection. 2. Spontaneous speaking is a skill anyone can develop by pushing past the fear of mistakes. 3. When you stop overthinking, speaking becomes second nature. 4. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Practice speaking every day. What's one mistake you've made while learning English, and what did you learn from it? We'd love to hear your stories and cheer you on. Thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, every step you take is progress, and we're here to support you every step of the way. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep believing in yourself.